Try to wrap yourself around this idea. People have a right to basic survival, even if they do nothing, even if they contribute nothing. Survival with dignity is one of the basic rights of life. I have given you enough resources to be able to guarantee that to everyone. All you have to do is share.
But what would happen to people? I mean, what would stop people from simply wasting their lives, lollygagging around, collecting benefits?
First of all, it's not yours to judge what is a life wasted. Is a life wasted if a person does nothing but lie around thinking of poetry for 70 years, then comes up with a single sonnet which opens a door of understanding and insight for thousands of people? Is a life wasted if a person lies, cheats, schemes, damages, manipulates, and hurts others all his life, but then remembers something of his true nature as a result of it? Remembers perhaps something he has been spending lifetimes trying to remember, and thus evolves at last to the next level? Is that life wasted? It's not for you to judge the journey of another soul. It's for you to decide who you are, not who another has been or has failed to be. So you ask what would stop people from simply wasting their lives, lollygagging around collecting benefits, and the answer is nothing.
But do you really think this would work? You don't think those who are contributing wouldn't begin to resent those who are not?
Yes, they would, if they're not enlightened. Yet enlightened ones would look upon the non-contributors with great compassion, not resentment.
Compassion?
Yes, because the contributors would realize that non-contributors are missing the greatest opportunity and the grandest glory. The opportunity to create and the glory of experiencing the highest idea of who they really are. And the contributors would know that this was punishment enough for their laziness, if indeed punishment were required, which it's not.
But wouldn't those who are really contributing be angry at having the fruits of their labor taken from them and given to the lazy ones?
You're not listening. All would be given minimal survival portions. Those who have more would be given an opportunity to contribute 10% of their earnings in order to make this possible. As to how income would be decided, the open marketplace would determine the value of one's contribution, just as it does today in your country.
But then we would still have the rich and the poor just as we do today. That's not equality.
But it is equal opportunity. For everyone would have the opportunity to live a basic existence without worries of survival. And everyone would be given an equal opportunity to acquire knowledge, develop skills, and use his or her natural talents in the joy place.
The joy place?
Yeah, that's what the workplace will then be called.
But wouldn't there still be envy?
Envy, yes. Jealousy, no. Envy is a natural emotion urging you to strive to be more. It is the 2-year-old child yearning and urging herself to reach that doorknob which her big brother can reach. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with envy. It is a motivator. It is pure desire. It gives birth to greatness. Jealousy, on the other hand, is a fear-driven emotion, making one willing for the other to have less. It is an emotion often based in bitterness. It proceeds from anger and leads to anger, and it kills. Jealousy can kill. Anyone who's been in a jealous triangle knows that. Jealousy kills. Envy gives birth. Those who are envious will be given every opportunity to succeed in their own way. No one will be held back economically, politically, socially. Not by reason of race, gender, or sexual orientation. Not by reason of birth, class status, or age. Discrimination for any reason will simply no longer be tolerated. There may still be the rich and the poor, but there will no longer be the starving and the destitute. The incentive won't be taken out of life, merely the desperation.
But what will guarantee that we'll have enough contributors to carry the non-contributors?
The greatness of the human spirit.
Oh?
Contrary to your apparent dire belief, the average person will not be satisfied with subsistence levels and nothing more. In addition, the whole incentive for greatness will change when the second paradigm shift, the spiritual shift, takes place.
What would cause such a shift? It hasn't occurred yet in the 2,000-year history
Try 2 billion-year history.
of the planet, so why should it occur now?
With the elimination of the need to succeed mightily in order to acquire a modicum of security, there will be no other reason to achieve, to stand out, to become magnificent, save the experience of magnificence itself.
And that will be sufficient motivation?
The human spirit rises. It does not fall in the face of true opportunity. The soul seeks a higher experience of itself, not a lower. Anyone who has experienced true magnificence, if only for a moment, knows this.
Well, how about power then? In this special reordering, there would still be those with inordinate wealth and power.
Financial earnings would be limited.
Oh boy, here we go again. You want to explain how that would work before I explain why it won't?
Yes. Just as there would be lower limits on income, so would there be upper limits. First, nearly everyone will tithe 10% of their income to the world government. This is the voluntary 10% deduction I mentioned before.
Yes, the old equal tax proposal.
In your present society at this time, it would have to take the form of a tax because you are not sufficiently enlightened to see that voluntary deduction for the general good is in your best interest. Yet when the shift in consciousness I have been describing occurs, such an open, caring, freely offered deduction from your harvest will be seen by you as obviously appropriate.
I have to tell you something. Do you mind if I interrupt you here to tell you something?
Go ahead.
Thanks. This conversation is seeming very strange to me. I never thought I'd have a conversation with God in which God would start recommending political courses of action. I mean, really, how do I convince people that God is for the flat tax? Indeed.
Well, I see you keep insisting on seeing it as a tax. But I understand that. Because the concept of simply offering to share 10% of your abundance seems so foreign to you. Nevertheless, why do you find it difficult to believe I would have an idea about this?
Well, because I thought God was non-judgmental, had no opinion, didn't care about such things.
Wait, let me get this straight. In our last conversation, I answered all sorts of questions about what makes relationships work, questions about right livelihood, questions about diet even. How does that differ from this?
I don't know. It just seems different. I mean, do you really have a political point of view?
Let me place this into context for you. Once again, I have no preference in the matter of how you conduct your life. My only desire is that you experience yourself fully as a creative being so that you might know who you really are.
Good, I understand that. So far, so good.
Every question I have answered here and every inquiry to which I responded in Book 1 has been heard, responded to, within the context of what you, as a creative being, say you are attempting to be and do. For instance, in Book 1, you asked me many questions about how you could finally make relationships work. You know?
Yes, of course.
Did you find my answers so problematic? Did you find it difficult to believe that I would have a point of view on this?
I never thought about it. I just listened to the answers.
Yes, you see, I was placing my answers within the context of your questions. That is, given that you desire to be or do so-and-so, what is a way to go about that? And I showed you a way.
Yes, you did.
I'm doing the same thing here.
It's just, well, I don't know, more difficult to believe that God would say these things than it was to believe that God would say those things.
Are you finding it more difficult to agree with some of the things said here?
Well, yeah.
Because if you are, that's very okay.
It is.
Of course.
It's okay to disagree with God?
Certainly. What do you think I'm going to do? Squash you like an insect?
Well, I hadn't gotten that far in my thinking, actually.
Look, the world has been disagreeing with me since this whole thing started. Hardly anyone has been doing it my way since it began.
That's true, I guess.
You can be sure it's true. Have people been following my instructions? Left with you through hundreds of teachers over thousands of years? The world would be a much different place. So, if you wish to disagree with me now, go right ahead. Besides, I could be wrong.
What?
I said, besides, I could be wrong. Oh my goodness. You're not taking this all as gospel, are you?
You mean that I'm not supposed to put any stock in this dialogue?
Oops. Hold it. I think you've missed a big part of all this. Let's go back to square one. You're making this all up.
Oh, well, that's a relief. You see, for a while there, I thought I was actually getting some real guidance here.
The guidance you are getting is to follow your heart. Listen to your soul. Hear yourself. Even when I present you with an option, an idea, a point of view, you are under no obligation to accept that as your own. If you disagree, then disagree. That is the whole point of this exercise. The idea wasn't for you to substitute your dependency on everything and everyone else with a dependency on this book. The idea was to cause you to think for yourself. And that is who I am right now. I am you thinking. I am you thinking out loud.
You mean this material is not coming from the highest source?
Of course it is. Yet here's the one thing you still cannot believe. You are the highest source. And here's the one thing you still apparently do not grasp. You are creating it all of your life, right here, right now. You are creating it, not me. You. So are there some answers to these purely political questions that you do not like? Then change them. Do it now. Before you start hearing them as gospel. Before you start making them real. Before you start calling your last thought about something more important, more valid, more true than your next thought. Remember, it's always your new thought that creates your reality. Always. Now, do you find anything in this political discussion of ours that you want to change?
Well, not really. I'm sort of agreeing with you as it happens. I just didn't know what to make of all this.
Make of it what you wish. Don't you get it? That's what you're doing with all of life.
Okay. All right. I think I've got it. I would like to continue with this conversation, if only to see where it's going.
Fine, then let's do that.
Well, you were about to say...
I was about to say that in other societies, enlightened societies, the putting aside of a set amount of what one receives, which you call income, to be used for the general good of the society itself, is a rather common practice. Under the new system we have been exploring for your society, everyone would earn as much each year as they could, and they would retain what they earn up to a certain limit.
What limit?
An arbitrary limit agreed to by everyone.
And anything above that limit?
Would be contributed to the World Charitable Trust in the name of the contributor, so all the world would know its benefactors.
If people knew, though, that after a certain income limit, everything would be taken from them, what would be their incentive to keep working once they reach their income limit?
Some would, so what? Mandatory work above the income limit with contributions to the World Charitable Trust would not be required. The money saved from the elimination of mass production of weapons of war would be sufficient to supply everyone's basic need, would elevate all of society, not just the chosen few, to a new level of dignity and abundance. And the contribution of earnings above the agreed-upon limit would produce such widespread opportunity and satisfaction for everyone that jealousy and social angers would disintegrate. So some would stop working, especially those who saw their life activity as real work. Yet those who saw their activity as absolute joy would never stop.
Yes, well, not everyone can have a job like that.
Untrue, everyone can. Joy at the workplace has nothing to do with function and everything to do with purpose. The mother who wakes up at 4 o'clock in the morning to change her baby's diapers understands this perfectly. She hums and coos to the baby, and for all the world, it doesn't look like what she is doing is any work at all. Yet it is her attitude about what she is doing. It is her intention with regard to it. It is her purpose in undertaking this activity, which make the activity a true joy. I've used this example of motherhood before because the love of a mother for her child is as close as you may be able to come to understanding some of the concepts of which I'm speaking.
Still, what would be the purpose? I mean, I don't get the purpose of eliminating limitless earning potential. Wouldn't that rob the human experience of one of its greatest opportunities, one of its most glorious adventures?
You'd still have the opportunity and the adventure of earning a ridiculous amount of money. The upper limit on attainable income would be very high, more than the average person would ever need. And the amount of income you could earn would not be limited, simply the amount you would choose to retain for personal use. The remainder, everything say over 25 million a year, I use a strictly arbitrary figure to make a point, would be spent for programs and services benefiting all humankind. As to the reason, the why of it, the upper retainable income limit would be a reflection of a consciousness shift on the planet, an awareness that the highest purpose of life is not the accumulation of the greatest wealth, but the doing of the greatest good, and a corollary awareness that indeed the concentration of wealth, not the sharing of it, is the largest single factor in the creation of the world's most persistent and striking social and political dilemmas.
But the opportunity to amass wealth, unlimited wealth, is the cornerstone of the capitalistic system. A system of free enterprise and open competition that has produced the greatest society the world has ever known.
The problem is you really believe that.
No, I don't. I mouthed it there on behalf of all those who do believe it.
Those who do believe it are terribly deluded and see nothing of the current reality on your planet. In the United States, the top 1.5% hold more wealth than the bottom 90%. The net worth of the richest 834,000 people is nearly $1 trillion greater than the poorest 84 million combined.
So, they've worked for it.
You Americans tend to see class status as a function of individual effort. Some have made good, so you assume that anybody can. That view is simplistic and naive. It assumes that everyone has equal opportunity, when in fact, in America, just as in Mexico, the rich and powerful strive and contrive to hold on to their money and their power and to increase it.
So, what's wrong with that?
They do so by systematically eliminating competition, by institutionally minimizing true opportunity, and by collectively controlling the flow and the growth of wealth. This they accomplish through all manner of devices, from unfair labor practices which exploit the masses of the world's poor, to good old boy network competitive practices which minimize and all but destroy a newcomer's chances of entering the inner circle of the successful. Then they seek to control public policy and governmental programs around the world to further ensure that the masses of people remain regulated, controlled, and subservient.
I don't believe that the rich do this. Not the largest number of them. I mean, there may be a handful of conspirators, I suppose, but...
In most cases, it isn't rich individuals who do it. It's the social systems and institutions they represent. Those systems and institutions were created by the rich and powerful, and it is the rich and powerful who continue to support them. By standing behind such social systems and institutions, individuals can wash their hands of any personal responsibility for the conditions which oppress the masses while favoring the rich and powerful. For example, let's go back to healthcare in America. Millions of America's poor have no access to preventative medical care. One cannot point to any individual doctor and say, this is your doing, it's your fault, that in the richest nation on earth, millions cannot get in to see a doctor unless they're in dire straits in an emergency room. No individual doctor is to blame for that, yet all doctors benefit. The entire medical profession and every allied industry enjoys unprecedented profits from a delivery system which has institutionalized discrimination against the working poor and the unemployed. And that's just one example of how the system keeps the rich rich and the poor poor. The point is that it is the rich and powerful who support such social structures and staunchly resist any real effort to change them. They stand against any political or economic approach which seeks to provide true opportunity and genuine dignity to all people. Most of the rich and powerful, taken individually, are certainly nice enough people with as much compassion and sympathy as anyone. But mention a concept as threatening to them as yearly income limits, even ridiculously high limits such as $25 million annually, and they start whining about usurpation of individual rights, erosion of the American way, and lost incentives. Yet what about the right of all people to live in minimally decent surroundings, with enough food to keep from starving, enough clothing to stay warm? What about the right of people everywhere to have adequate health care? The right not to have to suffer or die from relatively minor medical complications, which those with money overcome with a snap of a finger. The resources of your planet, including the fruits of the labors of the masses of the indescribably poor who are continually and systematically exploited, belong to all the world's people, not just those who are rich and powerful enough to do the exploiting.
And here is how the exploitation works. Your rich industrialists go into a country or an area where there's no work at all, but the people are destitute, where there is abject poverty. The rich set up a factory there, offering those poor people jobs, sometimes 10, 12, and 14-hour-a-day jobs at substandard, if not to say subhuman wages. Not enough, mind you, to allow those workers to escape the rat-infested villages, but just enough to let them live that way as opposed to having no food or shelter at all. And when they are called on it, these capitalists say, hey, they've got it better than before, don't they? We've improved their lot. The people are taking the jobs, aren't they? Why, we've brought them opportunity. And we're taking all the risk. And how much risk is there in paying people 75 cents an hour to manufacture sneakers which are going to sell for $125 a pair? Is this risk-taking or exploitation, pure and simple? Such a system of rank obscenity could exist only in a world motivated by greed. A profit margin, not human dignity, is the first consideration. Those who say that relative to the standards in their society, those peasants are doing wonderfully, are hypocrites of the first order. They would throw a drowning man a rope, but refuse to pull him to shore. Rather than raising the people to true dignity, these haves give the world's have-nots just enough to make them dependent, but not enough to ever make them truly powerful. For people of true economic power have the ability to then impact and not merely be subject to the system. And that's the last thing the creators of the system want. So the conspiracy continues. And for most of the rich and powerful, it's not a conspiracy of action, but a conspiracy of silence. So go now, go your way, and by all means say nothing about the obscenity of a socio-economic system which rewards a corporate executive with a $70 million bonus for increasing sales of a soft drink. And 70 million people can't afford the luxury of drinking this stuff, much less eating enough to stay healthy. Don't see the obscenity of it. Call this the world's free market economy, and tell everyone how proud you are of it. Yet it is written, if thou wilt be perfect, go and sell what thou hast, and give to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven. When the young man heard this, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possession.
I've rarely seen you so indignant. God doesn't become indignant. This proves that you are not God.
God is everything, and God becomes everything. There is nothing which God is not. And all that God is experiencing of itself, God is experiencing in, as, and through you. It is your indignation that you are feeling.
You're right, because I agree with everything you've said.
Know that every thought I am sending you, you are receiving through the filter of your own experience, of your own truth, of your own understandings, and of your own decisions, choices, and declarations about who you are and who you choose to be. There's no other way you can receive it. There's no other way you should.